Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Turn Dog Talks 2. I'm delighted to be joined by Mary Juetten. I hope that I've pronounced that correctly. The CEO and founder of Traklight. And I've asked her to come on board today so I can ask her some questions about the mistakes she's made and how she's overcome them, which is all for my book, The Successful Mistake. So, Mary, first of all, welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm sure the weather's rather nice. That you're in Arizona, is that correct?
Yes, I am. I'm in sunny Arizona in Phoenix. So,
I'm very jealous. Although I must say, the last couple of days here in Yorkshire has not been too bad. We've actually seen the sun for the first time in about 6 months, so that's been quite nice. Although I don't think it's quite been as hot as you'll be getting in Arizona. So
no.
yeah. So Mary, to start things off, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Okay, so I refer to myself as a recovering accountant. I'm actually Canadian, so I have a chartered accountant degree and a Bachelor of Commerce from McGill. And I worked in Canada, corporate America type job for about 20-ish years. And then I went back to law school here in the US. And when I was in law school, I noticed how people were losing their intellectual property. And I'm not talking about Apple or Samsung here, but your average person who was starting up a business, there was a lot of mistakes being made by other people. In this case, just tying into the theme, there were mistakes being made that I really felt could be avoided. So I came up with the idea, relying on my accounting background. I came up with the idea for a software tool that's like a TurboTax, which is an automated tax program. I don't know if they have that over there. They have
It's
Turbo.
it's not something I've heard of before, but chances are there is. I try and stay away from tax as much as possible because it makes my head hurt. So
Yeah. So the idea and so the notion is that when people do their taxes, they have that reaction that it makes their head hurt. So not everybody needs to become an expert in tax law. So what I created was a product that you don't have to become an expert in intellectual property or IP law. You can just answer basic questions. So it steps you through. And at the end, you get this list of all your potential intellectual property, along with several recommendations in terms of what you need to do next. And then we have an area where we provide education in the term, in the way of showing various videos are coming soon. We'll have white papers this week. So it's an educational portal piece of our site. And then along the way, we picked up the idea of doing a time-stamped vault to put your trade secrets in, to put your files in. You could put your escrow for software in there, whatever you wanted. So we have two versions of that. One is for the solo inventor or somebody who just wants their own IP somewhere, and the other one is a collaborative. It's 5 gigs, and you can have unlimited users. So our whole mission is to have people identify or figure out what they have before they lose it. So it's that old song, and I promise I won't sing. You don't know what you got till it's gone.
yep.
So we're trying to avoid that with, and basically we're starting off and we're focusing on inventors, small businesses, and startups. But we have plans for products that are for small businesses because that's another place where people don't have the budget to consult. I think you call them barristers or solicitors. I'm not sure
That's right.
which,
Yeah.
but here in the US, we call them attorneys. And we're not trying to take work away from them, but we're trying to empower and educate people to know more about what they have. And then they can go and have hopefully less expensive, very good interaction with an attorney.
Absolutely
So,
fantastic. And I must say, I know a few inventors and people who are on that side of things myself, and the little I know about sort of the IP side of things, it can become such a huge headache further down the line. And the more you know early on, and the more sort of boxes you tick in the beginning, the easier your life will be. And I'm imagining there's some entrepreneurs right now watching this video and typing away and thinking, right, okay, let's check out her website because this sounds interesting.
Well, hopefully, yes. And our vault can work anywhere in the world. Our questionnaire right now is more focused towards the US, but we are working on something that will work for anybody in the world. But that's kind of that was my idea. And I had the idea in January 2010. And the website finally launched in the form that we wanted it. And I guess it would be October 30th, 2012.
Okay, so
So
you've
that kind of was my big, it's a long time. So that's where my mistake comes in.
oh well, I'm excited to hear it. And so it is very sort of fresh, a very new website. I'm sure a lot of teething issues going in. So going straight into the mistake, it sounds like you've obviously had something that's occurred during that period of idea to inception. And if you could tell us the tale behind it, what happened, and then how you overcame it, that would be marvelous.
Okay, so I get to sum up the mistake was that as a founder, I had like, with an accounting background, because I also have a US CPA and, I have great Excel skills and everything, but did not have any programming skills. And I didn't have what turned out to be the key piece, which is not necessarily being able to program, but being able to speak programmer language, or as it's now, I think, referred to as technical literacy.
Mm.
And and so I went through well, actually, sorry, I went through two different developers and groups until I found my now CTO, who's awesome. But the mistakes I made along the way all related to the fact that I didn't know enough about what I was trying to do to convey it to pick the right people. So I lost, let's say, $5,000, but more importantly, I lost over a year in getting to market.
I see. So that was just a case of not quite understanding the right people to sort of speak to and get them involved because you didn't quite understand all the different terminology around and the ins and outs of that side of the pack.
Right. So, not that I didn't understand kind of how to contract with somebody, but when I was talking to developers, I had my vision and I created my entire product in Excel. And, I had a vision of what things would look like, but I didn't know how to translate that into something that a programmer would understand. And I also I didn't learn enough about what the right questions were or the right tests to
Mm.
give somebody. And what I learned from my current CTO is basically you should be saying to people who are going to develop, here, I'd like you to do this little test. It'll take you less than an hour. Just sort of show me what you can do. And that way you could tell if when you're saying something that translates it, back to you in something that you asked for. And what I had with the second group was I was told I had to use a certain programming language, which turned out I did not. I was told, oh no, this is the only way you can do it. And that just wasn't true. But I didn't have the background to understand that.
Okay.
And there is a big tendency for people to blame the programmers, but I don't think, or the developers. I don't think that's where the problem is. I think, obviously you get good developers and bad developers. But I think really what's important is making sure as a founder or somebody who wants to start a business that you have the literacy that's required.
Okay. So was it very much a case of you'd kind of read certain things and heard certain things and thought, right, these are the rules I need to follow, and then it turned out you didn't have to follow those rules. You just had to kind of create your own and make sure you were connecting with people who were able to, guess, see your vision and put it down into their expertise and their skill set.
Right. And it's getting the right person who is, there's lots of wonderful developers and some are really great at working with other developers, but it's a special skill to find a developer who can then work with somebody who's not technical,
Mm.
who's not a programmer.
Because it is a completely different language. I know a few people who are a bit web savvy and they're good on the sort of development side, and it is just a completely different language. And sometimes they are so technical that they are incapable of working with anyone who isn't got that same kind of mindset, even though they are genius and, you know, far more intelligent than the average sort of man or woman. But ultimately, you need someone who can actually relay what you want and interact with the team overall.
Right. Exactly. That's very
Okay.
well put.
Good, good. So when this issue, you say it knocked off about a year of your time, was that just because you were working with people who weren't quite getting the job done? Were you just keep on seeing these setbacks? I mean, where did this extra year come from?
So the beginning of it was that I I laid out what I thought I needed to do in order to give it over to the developers. And it was a combination of I created, like, for example, our questionnaire, our TurboTax like piece of software, it has a logic engine in it. So if you pick, to the first question, if you answer this, then you get sent over down this branch of questioning. And if you answer this plus this, then you get sent over there. And separate and distinct from that is a whole logic about how a report, because each person gets a custom report. So I had kind of put all of that together in one huge, we refer to it as the monster spreadsheet, one huge spreadsheet. And I don't think, I think part of it was that the developers didn't understand really kind of what I wanted at the end, how I wanted it to work, because I went ahead and I did all of this, and then they told me, "Oh no, you can't have these type of questions and you can't have those type of questions and it can't do this." And I was just like, "Well, wait a second. Like you you know, this has been around for a long time. This spreadsheet is in version whatever, 55 at that point. Why are you now telling me I can't have the questions like this?" So again, it was this just misunderstanding of, I think mainly this was more on their part. Like they didn't take the time to go through it in detail. And that's like my current CTO. I knew he was going to work out well when he said, "Okay, I've printed out the entire spreadsheet and I've figured out how all of this works." And so that was part of it. Part of it was that the way that they approached our vault didn't, there was this assumption, "Oh, well, we don't have to make it so it works on Internet Explorer." And I was like, "Of course you do, because there's nothing I hate more than when you get I'm a Mac user, and when I get something that doesn't run on Safari, it annoys me that I have to open up another browser."
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not an IE user currently. Well, actually, I am now, because I have, between my all my computers, I have every browser because we try to test in every environment. And that was the other piece, was that Uh, I did a lot more testing with my current developer. I wasn't as much a part of the process. And I think that's really important, so that I understand a lot more about computers now and about software than I did when I started working with my last CTO last summer. Before that, I felt kind of not part of the process. So it was sort of like, "Here's what we've developed for you." And they'd throw it over the fence and I'd be just shocked, saying, "No, this is nothing like what I saw." And what we use now with my current CTO is this whole agile, and we have a sprint list, and we decide each couple of days, "Okay, this is the priority. These are the things we're going to work on." And it never is something where he goes off and works for 2 weeks and then comes back to me with something. It's always iterative, and he has me logging on to development to look at our development site, to look at things, so that it's really dynamic and you feel
Mm.
like you're really working together and collaborating.
Nice. And it sounds like one of the initial issues was, and I think this happens a lot with entrepreneurs, trying to get the great idea from out of your head, and that makes sense 100% to you, but then trying to, transfer this so others can understand it. And whether that's trying to, speak to a designer, or in this case, a developer, or it might be someone who's kind of got a strategic process. It's so difficult to kind of take that idea from your head, where it makes all the sense in the world, and transfer that into an actual conversation that makes sense in the real world. So,
I, I again, that you have that you've captured it. That is a challenge. And for an entrepreneur, I've worked now with a bunch of different entrepreneurs because our products, even though I'm an entrepreneur myself, our products help
Mm.
entrepreneurs. And I really emphasize with them to go and learn a little bit more about the development process and make sure that you are better able to translate what your vision is. Like at the beginning, I didn't understand kind of that I should be sketching out the process and I should be sketching out like at the very high level. Doesn't mean that I have to be a designer.
Yeah.
Certainly not, but just sort of saying, okay, I see, you know, what I did was I spent a lot of time going and checking out other websites, not that do similar things, but just what the user experience was on other websites in terms of, oh, do I want to pay at the beginning? Do I want to pay at the end? Do I want to see a little bit more? So there's all these things that you don't really think about when you have this great idea for this new fill in the blank, whatever it is. It's a lot of little bitty details.
Brilliant. So if you were to go back to the beginning, do you think you maybe would have taken a sort of maybe a night class or read a few more books that would have sort of taught you a bit more about that technical side? Not to become an expert, but just so you could understand the terminology, understand the ins and outs, and I guess speak on the developer's level, I suppose.
I definitely, if, and that's what I advise people to do now who come to me and say, because I'm a mentor at a couple of a university and a couple of co-working locations here, and I just tell them, you know what, go online, find out if there's a bunch of different people who are doing what they're almost like technical literacy boot camps. There's one that we're bringing to Phoenix soon. It's called Tech Speak for Entrepreneurs. So there's people who are actual, can wear both hats. They're
Mm.
technical people who can communicate with non-technical people, and they're entrepreneurs. They've designed these courses. So either take those courses or read like website development for dummies or something like that. I should have not relied as much on the developer. That would be definitely my advice. And if I could roll back the clock, I'd also spend before I actually signed whatever agreement or brought them in as a business partner, I would have a little bit more of a courtship period where, you worked on a small project together. Like, let's say you're developing software and a website. Well, then get them to do just the website and see how you like working with them before you actually hire someone to do your software development. That, if right now I have a partner who's working for equity, but it's tens of thousands of dollars worth of work if we'd be paying for it.
Yeah.
So that's a serious investment. And if you don't know the people that you're going to work with, make sure you get like 5 references from
Yeah. And
people who are not their friends.
and it does sound like you've got a fantastic relationship with the developer now, and as well as learning how to, I guess, transfer that idea into an action is one thing, but you still need to be collaborating and working with people who actually understand that vision. Because you can be the greatest teacher in the world, but if that person doesn't get it, and if that person just can't get on board, they're not going to get on board no matter how well you describe it. So you need to find the right people who are going to think, yes, and I need to involve her now, and then not here, and then I need to do this so everyone's working together, because it sounds like things have gone on to massive levels once you got that smooth process kind of clicking along.
Right. We're able to do things, and my developer actually is not in Phoenix. He's from Arizona, but he's out in LA. So the whole notion that, you have to be in the same place, my other developers were here in Phoenix. It actually works just fine because of technology as we're using right now.
Absolutely.
Between Skype and text and emails, excuse me, and emails, we stay in touch, and we're just both on Skype on the development site, and we can just do development, boom, 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 boom. The other thing is that he's really good at deciding what needs to be automated in terms of, like, we have a whole admin back end of our system that allows me to create the coupons for discounts, allows me to approve affiliates and all of that. So it's set up so that we can manage it ourselves. Because that's another thing that I found with developers. They want to make it so that you're reliant on them
Yeah.
to go back. Whereas, and maybe it's because he's part of our business, but he's made it so that I don't have to go to him every time I want something done. I can like he's set up this whole admin system so that we can scale much faster, and that I don't have to keep going back to him to ask him to make little tweaks.
That's good. So it sounds like the initial mistake. One, in my opinion, it's given sort of two big things which I can sort of pull apart here. And one is that it's given you the knowledge that you really needed to sort of understand that technical side, which I suppose as you do more talks and you meet more clients, having this knowledge will help, tenfold. But it's also given you a great idea on how to hire and work with people in the future, because it is all about collaboration and forming relationships, and it's not always just, oh, he's got a really fantastic CV or she's got fantastic references. Sometimes it might be a graduate student who's fresh from college who you just get on fantastically with, and if they're talented and they get along and they understand where you're coming from, that'd be ideal.
Right. And for example, some of the developers that I work with have multiple degrees. My current CTO is self-taught. And
Yeah,
so, I mean, it's all about it's really difficult. There is a shortage of great developers who can work with anybody. And so that to try to find that person that you can work with. Now, if you're just putting up a website and you're using WordPress, then it's not as critical. But our site is all custom development. It's not, and then there's whole entire software applications that we've built. So that's
yeah.
why it becomes really, really, really important.
I would
So,
imagine this will help you in future, though, if you get to a point where you're wanting to bring in a financial director and an operations executive. All of a sudden, you'll be thinking, right, let's look beyond the references and CV, and let's see if there's going to be a connection there. Because whether it's a
right.
developer or your finance guy or whoever it may be, ultimately a lot of it comes down, especially in a small business, it comes down to those relationships where you can collaborate and just connect with one another.
Yes, exactly. And I think really I don't place a lot on a person's CV. I'd rather have somebody who's recommended to me by somebody
Mm.
else because they've had a good experience. That's a better starting place than the whole, send me all here. We have Arizona State where there's over 70,000 students, and they have great interns, and in other businesses that I've been in, we found some great interns from there, but it's a challenge to find somebody who then they have to share the passion for what we're
Yeah,
doing at Traklight, and that is a bit of a challenge. So,
absolutely. It's always difficult to sometimes get the right people involved, even if they are talented. Well, what an amazing journey it's been for the last couple of years, and it has hit some stumbling blocks along the way, but it sounds like it's made you a much more rounded individual, and it sounds like there's some fantastic processes now in process, if I say process a few more times, at Traklight, which will allow you to grow and grow and really sort of take the world by storm in the next few years.
well, I hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Well, I'm excited to follow the journey. Before we leave this fantastic interview, if you could offer one piece of advice to a young slash new entrepreneur, someone who's just thinking about starting out and developing that new business of theirs, what sage piece of wisdom would you share?
Just one piece. I'm not very good at just one, but I
You can
think
do two or three if you like. That's fine.
well, the one thing is if you have this idea, make sure, and this is my opinion only, make sure you're passionate about it. Make sure if this is something that you want to do, then don't listen to the people who are going to tell you that you're crazy, because that's a very common thing. So if you are passionate about it, you think it's a good idea, you go for it, but make sure you focus. Don't, you're going to get as you go along. I get people every day who are saying, "Oh, you should do this and you should do that," and like dangling these little things all over the place. So get your great idea, believe, but focus,
And
because
that's the
otherwise,
key thing, because I feel like a lot of people get the passion thing down, but I think entrepreneurs in a stereotypical view, it's not so much the the way forward these days. But I think the traditional sense, an entrepreneur is just from one project to the next. But focus is so key, because if you're always looking toward the next project, it means you'll never fully embrace the current one. So that'll obviously have an effect on cash flow and the bottom line and the actual growth of the company.
Right. And I guess if I could say one last thing is remember that the whole reason you're doing this is not because it's your great idea. It's for your customers. So you need to like deliver. I'm a huge Tony Hsieh Zappos.com fan, and this whole idea that you need to make your customers happy.
Yeah.
And so even though we're an online business, when people have problems with our products, those emails come to me still at this point because we're small. So I try to make sure that I answer them any time of the day and try to help people. So I am looking forward to when we're big enough that we have other people that do that. But I'll make sure that those people are chosen really, really carefully, because that's what we're all about. We're about helping these customers. So
Fantastic to hear. It's always good to hear a company who puts the customer first and not the profit margin, because if you put the customer first, the money will come. It may take a little bit longer, but you'll certainly reap the benefits. Well, thank you so much, Mary. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to your insight. It's been a thoroughly interesting ride, and I'm sure your journey will only get better and more intriguing in the coming months and years.
well, thank you very much. That's very nice of you to say.
Thank you very much for joining me. And to you too, viewer, for watching. I hope you've taken a great deal from Mary's insight, and I hope that you'll check out all her links and see what she's doing over at Traklight. So, thank you again for joining us, and have a fantastic evening.
Thank you, you too.